Here is Luke Chung. Mr. Luke Chung was born in New York to Taiwanese parents. After a distinguished high school career, he attended and graduated Harvard College with a bachelor's in applied mechanics and a master's in physical oceanography. He is the founder of Financial Modeling Specialist Incorporated, a database software solutions company based in Tysons Corner. Mr. Chung has served in the educational public service sector and spoke extensively on the healthcare.gov failure in 2013. He is a Harvard alumni interviewer and has coordinated Harvard alumni interviews for the Washington, D.C. area since 2008. Here to talk about the Harvard admissions process and how to differentiate yourself. Please welcome Mr. Luke Chung.
Thank you. So I'm going to gear this talk towards the students because the students need to care about getting into school. I don't really care what the parents think, right? Because it's your future. So how many are seniors right now? Okay. And how many are juniors? All right. How many of you are thinking of applying to Harvard? Okay. A few. A few? Okay. Well, we'll go through this and just discuss a little bit about what it is and what the process is. Okay, so today I'll just talk a little bit about my background, about Harvard College, some of the admission statistics, how financial aid works, and how to keep all of this in perspective, along with the application process. So, you've had a little bit about my background. My parents are from Taiwan, so I was born in New York City, but I didn't grow up in Taiwan. Well, I have from Taiwan, so we spoke Taiwanese at home, so I can speak Taiwanese, but I'm illiterate. I can't read or write Chinese. I graduated from a high school in Florida, a small high school. There were only 44 kids in my graduating class. It was one of the first magnet schools in the country. There were three of them. I was a National Merit Finalist, Presidential Scholar from Florida. I went into Harvard in 1981 for sophomore standing, got a degree in applied mechanics and then oceanography, which I did not expect to get, but that's just what happened. I did a research cruise, I guess between my junior and senior year with the Office of Naval Research out in California, on the Oregon-California coast, and I vomited up and down the Oregon-California coast and decided I needed a different career path than oceanography. So I've never used any of my education for my career, really. So in 1985, I decided not to get a PhD because that was the path I was on, and my family thought that was kind of like dropping out of high school. So I didn't go down that path. I joined a management consulting firm here in DC, which was focused on serving large corporations and helping them with their strategic planning. So in that career, or that brief 2-year period, it's one of those management consulting, investment banking type jobs where they work you like a dog, and you're supposed to go to business school afterwards to get to the next level. Right? If you're an associate or paralegal in a law firm, it's kind of the same experience. Resident in medical school. It's just an intense, some would say awful, some would say exciting period before you go and commit to the career. So at that point, I decided I wasn't going to go to grad school and that I would create a software company. And the software company at the time was kind of novel because it was building PC software for business. And that was a new idea. So I know you young kids here have no clue what that world was like, but people didn't really think PCs could be used for real business decision making. I figured I'd give it a year. If it worked, I'd keep doing it. If not, I'd go to graduate school and become a good corporate soldier or something. I didn't know what I was going to do, but thankfully after close to 30 years, I haven't had to go to graduate school. But the interesting thing about this was that when I started my company, it was in a field that didn't exist when I was in college. So it really wouldn't have mattered what I studied in college. PC software development did not exist when I was in college 2 years prior to that. And so I want you to keep that in mind in terms of when you're choosing careers or when you're making decisions for what to study, that the topic and content of what you study is much less important than the fact that you know how to study, you know how to read, you know how to write, you know how to present, you know and are interested in whatever field you decide to pursue. Okay, so quickly, I'll just go through basically a background of nothing that I did in my life was planned properly because it's really hard to predict the future, right? And so over 3 decades, my business has evolved a great deal with the changes in technology, changes in the economy, changes in regulations, and so on. So we became a partner in the 1990s with Microsoft. That turned out to be a good decision. I created a product in the end of the 90s for Y2K. And so that was a big deal. That was a very lucrative opportunity. Then there was a whole dot-com crash in the 2000s. We survived that. 9/11 occurred. That's bad, but you know, hey, bad things are an opportunity for me. So we created a software product to help analyze data to look for hidden relationships among people, places, and events. That led to an investment at our only outside investor, InQtel, which is the CIA's venture capital arm. So we're part of that family. And then we're doing things right now with cloud computing and mobility. And basically, my whole drive is to create things that have never been done before, especially using data to help organizations make better decisions. And you know, if you are or know someone who's a Visual Studio .NET developer, I'm looking to hire. Okay, so community activities. I'm past president of the Washington D.C. chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. I've served on some advisory boards to the Fairfax County Superintendent of Schools. I was on this teacher evaluation task force to revamp how teachers get evaluated, which was a thankless job. I learned that 14,000 teachers in Fairfax County, only 4 get fired a year, so really you can't lose your job. I serve on an IT policy advisory board for Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to help them with their technology decisions. And I've done various testimonies and things like that on Capitol Hill. Okay, so let's move along to why I'm here, the Harvard College interview process of why I'm qualified to do this. Basically for Harvard, and this varies by school, every candidate who applies is given a personal interview. And it's usually done by an alumni in the local area. So these are volunteers, and I did that once I graduated from college. And I did about 3 to 5 a year over many, many years. And about a decade ago, I got involved in helping them. They were doing it so manually, so that I came up with a software package to help them automate the process. So the solution I have is with the schools committee here in the DC chapter of the Washington Harvard Club, and we interview about 1,050 candidates in the area each year, in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, and about 60 will get in. Right? So about 20 per region will get in. The admission rate is about 6%. So 20 in Maryland, 20 in DC, 20 in Virginia. Right? The DC ones will mostly be from private schools, and the Maryland and Virginia candidates will mostly be from public schools. So, what I'm providing here today is unofficial. I am not an employee of Harvard College. I do not work for the admissions office. I do not speak on behalf of Harvard College. Okay, so if I say something and you think it's true and you go up to their website and the website says something different, the website is correct, I'm wrong. Okay, so I am unofficial. So you cannot pin anything down on me. Right? I am going to speak from my experience as a student, as a graduate, alumni interviewer, and a parent. My daughter just got in, starting there right now, so a month ago. And they have a website that discusses college.harvard.edu/admissions is where all the official information is. So I'll just go over some basics. So there's Harvard College and Harvard University. And there's a difference between the two. Okay? The college is the undergraduate part. Okay? It was founded in 1636, basically by pilgrims. They went in 1620, they created this divinity school, 1636, around 6,600 students, around 1,600 per class. So 4 years. It also includes Radcliffe. Radcliffe used to be a sister organization. That Harvard used to be all male, Radcliffe was all female, and they merged, I think, in the 70s. I mean, it was already merged when I was there. But you'll sometimes see Radcliffe, but that's part of Harvard. And now, Harvard University is bigger than Harvard College. Harvard University includes all of the different other schools, the graduate schools, the medical school, the law school, the business school, the divinity school, education school, design, arts and sciences, and so on. College is just one piece of the university. When you apply to college, you only apply to college. Later, if you want to go to grad school, you apply to the particular graduate school for them. Harvard College and the philosophy of Harvard College is that it is not pre-professional. You do not go there to get an accounting degree. You do not go there to get even an engineer. You don't go there to get a degree that really you can do anything with, correctly. That's not what they're designed to do. Their focus is really to take people at one level to another level, usually people who are going to be successful anyway. They throw them together, see what happens, and then they take credit for them for the rest of their career. Even though they only spent 4 years of their life there, whether that helped, whether that was their success was because of or in spite of those 4 years, they take credit the whole way. Admissions is general. There is no admission to a particular school or a declaration of major or concentration. You do not need to declare what you're going to be studying until the first semester of sophomore year. The presumption is that a 16 or 17-year-old really doesn't know what they want to do with their life when they apply, and they just don't care or listen. The other interesting thing about Harvard is that registration for classes occurs 2 weeks after classes start. So it is called a shopping period. The idea is that the professors have to compete with each other, and you choose whichever class you want to go to based on visiting. Right? So there's a shop-around period. And the result of that is that some classes get very big because people want to see those professors, and other classes no one attends, and the professor has to do something else about that. So the admissions process. Okay, college, getting into college is brutal. The odds are terrible. One of the most competitive in the country. So the things I'm going to discuss right now are really to let you understand what the process is at this level, and some of the things you may want to think about, whether you're applying to Harvard or Princeton or other very competitive schools, Stanford, which I think has an even lower admissions rate. Slightly different from the very brutal admission rates to the military academy, right? Those are difficult to get into, but their criteria is different. So, in this past year, class of 2019, there were 37,000 who applied, and a little over 2,000 were admitted, right? So about a little over 5.5%. That's awful. And they'll say that 90% of the applicants are academically qualified. Right? So most of the people who apply are academically qualified. Right? So academics is a very tiny part of the criteria. So of the 2,000 who were admitted, 1,665 actually matriculated. Right? So a couple hundred went someplace else. And so these numbers are such that, with an admission of 2,000 students, you have to understand that there are, I think, 20,000 high schools in the U.S. All right? So it's fewer than, it's fewer than each valedictorian. Right? That's the competition that you're up against. Now, of course, not every valedictorian from every school is applying, but those are the numbers. Right? So just being the best at your school is not enough. Keep that in perspective. Right? Now, on the plus side, 21.3% of this year's class is Asian American. That's a very high number. Some people are claiming there's a lawsuit going on right now with Harvard saying it's not high enough, but compared to the general population, Asians are what, 3%, 5%? I mean, it's a huge over sampling, let's say. When I was there, it was 12%. I thought it was huge. I've never been around so many Asians before. But now there's even more. There are 2 rounds of admissions. There's early action and regular admission. Early action is happening right now, so I think applications have to be submitted by the end of this month. And decisions are provided in mid-December, right before Christmas. Last year, 927 kids were admitted early action. That's a 16% admission rate. 45% of total admissions were done through early action. Right? So early action, as I say, the criteria for early action kids is the same as regular admissions. It's just that the pool of early applicant kids is very, very small. So what that means is for regular admission, the admission rate is probably about 3%, right, when the big pool applies. Early action is voluntary. It's not binding, so you can apply early and still choose to go somewhere else. I would tell you that that's true from every school, even if they tell you you're required to go if they admit you. I'm pretty sure there's nobody in jail for not honoring their early admission commitment. Right? It's not a crime, and as a 17-year-old, anything you sign is not legally binding. Right? So don't worry about that. Apply to where you want to apply. So early action, 927 admitted, 4,300 were deferred, 541 were denied. So application dates. If you want to apply and apply early, you have to submit it by November 1st, notification to December. The criteria is you can't apply to other private schools. Applying to public schools is okay. Regular decision is the applications are due by January 1st. That makes for a very nice Christmas break. And then you're notified late March, April 1st at the latest. And then everybody has to give their commitment by May 1st. Okay? So all this information is up on the website, and that's how it works. Financial aid. So obviously this is a huge issue, right? So the cost of attending Harvard is pretty high. It's around $64,000, $65,000 a year. The college bills for $60,000 plus, and then you have a person have to go and buy books and things like that. Everybody who attends is on room and board there, so that includes your tuition, your room and board. Everybody's on the same meal plan. Everybody eats there. About 98% of the students stay on campus housing all 4 years. Okay? And the only people I knew that did not live on campus were when we became seniors. There were some girls who got married, maybe to upperclassmen, and then they lived off campus. But the rest were on campus, and one of the biggest values of the college experience is meeting and getting to know other people, fellow students there. Matter of fact, one could argue that's the most valuable thing you get out of the experience. Harvard is committed to a needs-blind admissions policy. So admissions are provided without regards to financial aid, and anyone who needs financial aid is provided financial aid up to 100% of their financial aid need, according to whatever government statistics are. And the financial aid is provided without loans. Okay, without loans or jobs, it's grants. There are no merit scholarships. No one at Harvard is told that they're smarter than other people to warrant a merit scholarship. And in the Ivy League, there are no athletic scholarships. Okay, so athletic scholarships are not allowed. That's what makes Jeremy Lin very interesting, right? Because he played at a very high level without an athletic scholarship. So eligibility for financial aid. 60% of students are on financial aid, average $12,000. If the family earns less than $65,000, it's free. Okay? So the family's not expected to pay anything if the family earns less than $65,000 a year. And 20% of the students fit that category. For families with more modest incomes, between $65,000 and $150,000, the contribution that's expected is 0 to 10%. Okay, 10% of family, no more than 10% of family income for up to $150,000. And then it's also pretty much similar to $200,000. So in general, and for most families, this will cost less than a state school. And remember, these numbers include room and board. Also includes room getting you to and from home, books, all those things. Right? So all grants, no loans, no jobs. And the point is, you shouldn't have debt after college. There shouldn't be an advantage just because you come from a rich family. Okay, so that's good. So there's plenty of money if you're qualified to get it. Getting in is the hard part. It's not the money part. But getting in is the most difficult part. So how does that work? So when you apply, there's several criteria that they're looking for. Obviously, you need to have very strong academics. In general, the kids who get in have been in the top of their class for a very long time. And what happens when you get a whole bunch of people who have been in the top 1%, 5%, 10% of their class, and you put them together, Harvard hasn't been able to fix this, but it turns out every year, 49% of the kids are in the bottom half of the class. Right? So, when you take a bunch of kids who've always performed at the top and you put them in the bottom half of the class, they either wilt or they kick it up a notch. Right? Because they can't believe it. They cannot believe that they are below average. So if you're not qualified to play in that field, then it could be a very brutal experience. You're like, I want to play in the Super Bowl, right? But there is no reason for me to be on that field to play in the Super Bowl because I'd be injured on the first play. I mean, it's just, I'm not qualified. It's ridiculous. There's no reason for me to be there. So it is important that if you're going to play this game, that you understand what you're getting to, because you really don't want to be in the bottom half. You know, you don't want to be the last person in it. You want to be in the bottom of the class no matter where you go. So keep that in mind. So because 90% of the kids are academically qualified, that means the criteria that's being used to evaluate which kids get in goes way beyond academics. So there are a lot of kids who try to do more academics. Like, oh, I'm taking 7 AP classes. Oh, I'm taking 12 AP classes. I'm doing, you know, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter whether you take 7 or 12 or add another one. That's not what's being looked at. Scores, you know, you get SAT scores or ACT scores or whatever. I mean, 100 points, that really doesn't matter. Okay, that is not the issue. Because once you're academically qualified, you're thrown in a group that's all considered equal. Right? And academically qualified means you can graduate in 4 years. Right? It would be a shame, it's considered bad for the admissions office to let in someone who flunks out. Right? I mean, that's, given the pool of kids they can choose from, choosing somebody who's not academically qualified would be a pretty bad decision from the admissions office, unless, you know, they could throw a football 50 yards or something like that. But in general, that's not a good thing for them to do. So what they're looking for are people who are academically talented, but have shown that they can do that along with other things. Right? So extracurriculars becomes a very big deal because there are a lot of kids who got great grades, great test scores, and also are amazing in other things, and that's what they're looking for. Right? And what we're talking about here is really trying to find the top of the students that will make a positive contribution while they're on campus and to make a positive contribution in society afterwards. And this is where I think a lot of the Asian parents, especially immigrants, get confused with the admissions process because they're used to a system that was based on tests and test scores alone. And that's not the criteria for college admissions in the U.S. Okay? So it is not just test scores. And there have been numbers that have been shown that, and this is the lawsuit that's going on with Harvard and some other institutions right now, that Asian applicants have to score 120 points on average higher on the SAT to get into schools than others, and one could say, yeah, that's part of it, but that's because that's the strength that they're bringing to the table, and they're not bringing in other strengths, right? So what are they looking for? Extracurriculars, which involves leadership, I mean, not just participation, but leadership, recognition. It means above school award levels, okay? And because they're choosing fewer than one per school, having a school award is nice, and that's great, but it's not distinguishing, right? So state level awards are really good, national level awards are even better. And it doesn't matter what that field is, right? But somebody's getting those state and national awards, and most of them aren't going to get admitted either. So you need to keep that into consideration and think about how that fits for you. And it doesn't matter what the field is, because Harvard or most of these schools are looking to fill an entire team, not just the same player with the same kind of profile for everybody. So they're looking for a mix. And this is a challenge for Asian students because, how many Asian pianists and violinists do we need? Are you competing in that group? So keep that in mind. Teacher recommendations. Teacher recommendations are huge, very important. It's very important to find teachers who will give you a high recommendation. It doesn't matter what subject they are. And if you're competing at the highest levels for these schools, you need a teacher who will say that you are one of the best students that they have ever taught in their career. Because a place like Harvard is only going to accept a few, maybe only one, of their students in their career. Depends which school you go to. So if you're not distinguished in that way, or your teacher doesn't think you're distinguished that way, like, oh, the student is the top 10% of the kids I've taught, I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept 10% of this teacher's kids. So but the subject matter doesn't matter, right? So some people think, oh, I got to get my biology teacher to do it because I want to study pre-med, and it doesn't matter. You can have an English teacher do it, a math teacher do it, whatever. It's just, have you built a relationship with the teacher? Do they think you're distinguished in some manner to be able to say that you're that different? Okay? Personal essay is important. It's your opportunity to do there. That's probably the only thing you control. So it's what you describe in terms of what your experience has been and what you want to do with your life. And ideally that's different. And ideally, it will incorporate, why the institution will help you get to whatever goals you want to do. One of the things to remember, especially as students, everybody has parents that are defective, right? No parent has been trained to be a parent. I mean, all us parents have been trained by our parents who, we try to avoid the mistakes they've made and, create new ones. So, you, as a student in high school, you're about to take control of your life. You're about to make decisions that impact your life and nobody else's. And you have to take responsibility for that. And, thank your parents for immigrating and doing all the things to enable you to have the opportunities you have. But you got to let that go and look forward to what you're going to be able to do and what you want to do with your life. Because believe me, your parents made lots of sacrifices so you could have the freedom and choices that they never had. Right? So take advantage of it. And so, what matters to you? How are you going to change the world? Those are good things to talk about. A last part of that is an alumni interview. And the alumni interview is pretty basic. It's really geared towards trying to add more value to your application beyond the numbers, right? So I'll discuss that a little bit differently. But ultimately, it comes down to how are you different from similar applicants, right? You are coming from, I presume, suburban Maryland, the DC metropolitan area. This area is very, very, I wouldn't say competitive, but it's very supportive to education. This is milquetoast. This is not like Southeast DC. This is not a rural Nebraska. You have lots and lots of opportunities here, and so you have an advantage over other places. But you have to distinguish yourself from all the other people from these great places. Okay, so the interview, the alumni interview. This is, some people stress out about it. I'll tell you that it's not supposed to be a stress test. It's not supposed to be, you're not going to be, forced to solve a quadratic equation or anything like that. There's no test in an alumni interview. It's just a conversation with somebody who can answer some questions for you, tell you a little bit about their experiences there, and for them to try to formulate an essay that puts you in the best possible light. The alumni interviewer is not being hired or paid to provide the interview. Okay? They're doing it on a voluntary basis, and they would like you to succeed. Matter of fact, the payoff for giving an interview is to hopefully interview somebody who gets admitted, goes to the college, and has a great experience. Right? That's the only payback. You're their only payback. So they're on your side. And in general, the interview essay or interview results are very consistent with the rest of the application. Good student, good teacher recommendations, good essay, good interview, right? Bad student, bad teacher recommendation, bad essay, bad interview. Rarely is the interview out of line with the rest of the process. So it's an opportunity for you to ask questions, which is really great. I would advise that you have some questions, right? Or show that you have some information on Harvard, as opposed to asking some really basic questions. It's in Cambridge, it's cold, things like that. So, now the critical thing is to show, what makes you tick and what you think is important. And I'll tell you, through my years of interviewing kids, I could tell probably within the first 10 minutes whether a student was self-motivated or parent-motivated. Okay? And there's a very big difference between a student who is self-motivated versus parent-motivated. Right? The parent-motivated student not going to survive. Right? So as parents, we want to inspire our kids to be able to do things because they want to do it. And as kids, you want to be able to show that you're passionate about something that you want to do or you care about. Okay, so there's no guarantees. I can't tell you a formula about getting in. You know, what works one year doesn't work another year. The admissions office is filling out an entire class with lots of different people, right? So they've got musicians, they've got athletes, they've got brilliant students, you know, on Nobel track, they've got, you know, writers, they've got social people who care about social change, and engineers, and scientists, and doctors, and future lawyers, and investment bankers, and, you know, my classmate might cause the financial collapse in 2008. I don't know what they did. But, you know, they're trying to get lots and lots of different people with different spots. Okay? So it's not the same. And what they're looking for are unique traits of each individual student. And they're looking for people who are going to make campus life interesting and to make a difference in society. Athletes have a huge step up. So athletes who can play at the Division I level and are academically qualified, those two are almost mutually exclusive, have a huge advantage. And this is where I think a lot of Asian parents or some of these law students don't understand is that there are lots of spots open for athletes that get tapped by the coaches. And likely letters from coaches are like gold. But very low representation of Asians in those categories, right? They have to fill a football team, they have to fill a lacrosse team, men's and women's soccer team, swimming teams, so on and so forth. So that's a real big issue. But obviously, if you can compete at the Division I level, that means you have to be a really good athlete. So the way the Ivy League works with admits for athletes, especially athletes that are weaker academically, right? Because this is kind of line that we're drawing between getting a great athlete and whether they can pass or not. The athletes can be one standard deviation below the mean of the class when it comes to academic criteria. So they're good athletes, but they're actually still pretty good students as well. Then kids of alum have a slight advantage. So my kid has a slight advantage, but it's still very competitive. If they really just wanted alum, they can fill the class many times over with just alumni children. So that's just not the way it works, and alumni kids certainly have an advantage over non-alum because hopefully, I mean, it would be odd if they had a disadvantage, right? So that's that. So it's a very stressful process, admission, whether it's at Harvard or someplace else. It's stressful for students, it's stressful for parents. I experienced it for the first time this year, and my daughter had like the best case scenario, and it's still very stressful for me because I just have to stand on the sidelines and not be able to do it. As parents, I think part of this criteria is to let it go, right? The kids have to take responsibility. As parents, we did what we could. We positioned our children to the best possible opportunities that they had. As parents, we shouldn't judge ourselves based on what our kids do or where they go to school. They are empowered to make their own decisions, and they can make some good ones and they can make some bad ones. I'm a big believer that failure is part of learning. Kids who fail and fail often and understand that that's a part of learning, both personally and academically, are the ones who have the deepest resilience and aren't afraid of trying. Right? There's so many students who are afraid of trying because they're afraid of failing, not because they will fail. Right? And so I think the advice I give to other parents is it's really important. I've lost one child in our family, the second one's a sophomore in high school. Pretty soon she's going to leave too. So, I have to work on my relationship with my wife because the kids have passed through, and in the end, it'll be my wife and myself. So, I will focus on that and less so on the kids. Students, take responsibility for your life. You can't blame your parents for everything that goes wrong. Everybody else has parents, and believe me, your friends' parents are pretty messed up too. So, it's your life, and really, in the end, you have to care more about your future than anybody else because it's your life, right? So, move on with it. And do what happens. So, key thing is to maintain perspective. College is only 4 years of life. It's not the end-all, be-all. It doesn't really matter where you go to school. Where you go to college is not the criteria, certainly in the U.S., of whether you're successful or not. Very different from Asian countries where it's very clear. Top test scores go here, second group of test scores go to this college, and so on. That's not the way it works here. You can be successful no matter where you go to college. Right? So there's no monopoly on knowledge. What's taught at Harvard is taught the same place everywhere else. The books are the same. Google works the same way on every campus. The information is there. You can get to it, right? So the question is, what are you going to do with the opportunities that you have? I think the most critical thing is choosing a college that fits you as a student and what you're looking for, the field of study that you're looking for, the peers and environment that you're looking for, because that fit is much more important than the name brand, right? So where can you grow as a person is critical, and don't attend a school where you're going to be the bottom half of the class, right? I mean, you want to be in the middle somewhere so you don't get run over. Attending Harvard. Attending Harvard does not guarantee career success. I have peers who do not have good careers, did not have good careers. It definitely doesn't guarantee happiness. There are a lot of messed up people in school. I have some friends who I learned after college committed suicide because of depression and things like that. I mean, you know, certain people have expectations that are unrealistic and personal issues that have nothing to do with where you go to school. So it's much better, I think, to have a healthy personal and mental life than to try to achieve criteria that other people have set, or your own personal expectations that are beyond reasonableness. So it's not a good place to go if you're not qualified, and even if you don't get in undergraduate, you can find wherever you go, and if you want to come back later in graduate school, you can apply again. All right? That's it. Thank you very much.